I scrapped the original script for Deadpool because I started writing it before I finished the game. Bad move. I had a certain view of Deadpool in my mind that was far more favorable than the reality. I'm gonna give 2013's Deadpool the full review treatment, and I promise I'm not going to only look at older games on this channel. It just so happens that these have been my interests over the past few weeks. Also, I just couldn't bring myself to shell out the money for Veilguard. Hell with that game. Before I get deeper into the good, the bad, and the in-between of Deadpool, let's get some backstory. Deadpool is an action-adventure game from 2013 that was developed by High Moon Studio. If that name sounds familiar, it's because High Moon is currently a support studio for the Call of Duty franchise. You may have heard of it. You can't buy Deadpool anymore except through old physical copies. Activision lost the rights at some point and is no longer able to sell the game digitally on current stores. However, if you already own the game on Steam, you can still download and play it. I'm sure there's probably also emulation for it as well. But was the game any good? Let's get into the good, the bad, the in-between of 2013's Deadpool.
Don't make me do this, please. Why the long face?
She always looks so surprised to see us.
If this game had a shame meter, it'd be full right now.
When I started playing this game, I really wanted to do some sort of like retrospective for the game, much in the way that I did with Asura's Wrath. I had a certain viewpoint in my head about Deadpool from back in the day that disappeared the more I played the game. The humor of this game can best be described as childish.
Keep him out of the newsroom.
Ooh, a TV studio.
I always thought we'd make a great reality TV show.
Chance White dies at the hands of super sex pot mercenary. Story at 11.
Puerile.
Underwear?
Overly sexual.
Lo behold.
Number one fangirl is hot!
And incredibly immature.
Whew. Sometimes it's the setup work that'll get you all tuckered out. Bounce house. Check.
Boing.
Boing. Boing. Boing.
Boing.
Boing.
In other words, it's hilarious. Deadpool's writing harkens back to a time before, quote, modern audiences became a thing. Much like the Ryan Reynolds movies, the game is as irreverent as it wants to be, and it doesn't hold back any punches.
Let's gently poke the furry one and find out. Oh, Wolvie, time to wake
Rise and
up.
shine, Stubby. Wake up. Up and at it. Fine then. That's for all the clown jokes. That's for never calling just to say hi. That's because I get aroused when I slap people. That's for all the furry midgets in the world. That's because I feel like it. Why won't you wake up? Wake up! That's because the player keeps mashing the button. That's because I like slapping fleshy things with this hand. That's for being in more comics than me. That's for making me love you. That's for making me hate you. That's for never taking us to the prom. That's for always working late. That's for being short. That's for stabbing me in the heart. Literally. That's for never letting me fly the Blackbird except when I crashed it. That's for being the worst wingman in bromance history. That's because I want to see if the player will keep doing this. That's for all the hot gamer girls out there. Hey, call me. That's for being a total douche. That's for never washing the dishes. That's for last year's white elephant gift. Who wants a white elephant? And finally, that's because the whole setup just added 5 minutes of bonus play to the most awesome game ever devised by Mutant or Man. I guess he's not waking up.
The legendary Nolan North not only voices Deadpool, but even has a cameo as himself.
Nolan, hey, what's up, buddy? We're making a game about me. Gotta have you do the VO, man. I mean, see, here's the thing. People tell me we sound alike.
That sounds awesome, Deadpool. Listen, I had a different take on it. Maybe we just make you, maybe it's an alternative type of Deadpool. It's somebody that's like, forget the boobs. Let's just go for pecs. Pecs and biceps. Forget girls. Why don't you just contact my agent for the booking, and we'll see what we can do.
He's so in.
Look, Deadpool, I got another call coming in. Gotta take it. Good luck with the game, though.
Yeah, well, fuck you, Nolan.
He nails the role, sticks the landing, and kept me interested the entire time, even when gameplay couldn't. More on that later. But I expect nothing less of North. The man is a beast and has voiced some of my favorite characters over the years. The writing of the game is top notch. It respects the character, even if Deadpool doesn't respect himself. There are lots of jokes about DP, hot chicks, a censor bar joke that never gets old no matter what sort of game or movie it's in.
Yeah.
Haha! There we go. Now we're talking.
Much more realistic.
Boobs, and most importantly, butts. Oh yeah, chimichangas. The writers understood the assignment here. There are a few introspective jokes, specifically about how women are treated in the game, that normally would be used to turn a mirror onto the game itself, or maybe preach about some social issue, but it's played for laughs.
Hi, Deadpool. So I totally told her this wasn't gonna be a hot party, so she didn't come. Thank God, she's not cool enough to hang out with Deadpool. I know! I can't believe she has 2% body fat. I mean, really? Oh my God, this conversation is so cliche. I know, right? We're so specifically written as female tropes, it's almost painful.
Some of the X-Men make an appearance by way of Rogue, Wolverine, Domino, and Psylocke, each of them being relegated to nothing more than eye candy. Looking at you, Wolverine. But Deadpool makes sure the game is about himself. He breaks the fourth wall, like always, and sometimes the level design even reflects that in places. Deadpool knows he's in a game and is constantly yelling at High Moon about the game itself. At one point, the level goes from a sewer level to an old top-down 8-bit inspired design, with Deadpool even commenting about it. There's an on-rails shooter later on that sees you shooting clowns and saving hot chicks. You also have a fairly old system, even by this game's standard, of finding coins on the ground. Enemies drop coins when you kill them, dropping even more if you obtain a higher hit combo. These coins are everywhere and they range in value, and you use them to buy upgrades for your weapons, unlock throwables, and upgrade Deadpool himself. The story is simple. Deadpool is tasked with hunting down a mark for whatever reason. We don't actually know because Deadpool didn't read the script for the game.
Scene 1. Dark and stormy night. Deadpool is contracted to kill media mogul Chance White, who is blah 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 dee blah blah. Don't need that. Edit that.
Ah, crayons. Very classy.
Why are we trying to kill what's-his-face?
Who cares? I'm making art here.
What follows is a story that has Deadpool chasing after the target only to see Mr. Sinister kill him. Naturally, Deadpool now has to kill Sinister. The rest of the story is essentially chasing after Sinister to Genosha, where they eventually square off against each other in an epic, sort of, final battle. There are some interesting characters along the way, like Lady Death, Mistress Death, Death, whatever you want to call her, and there's also Cable. The bad guys in this game are Arclight, Vertigo, Blockbuster, Sinister, Marauders, and various clones of Gambit that explode if they get too close to you. I'm not super well versed on the Deadpool comics, but even Deadpool thought that they were lame enemies, Vertigo being the worst. But these are the cast of characters, and the story itself is simply okay. I'm putting all this in the good category because the writing for everything Deadpool related was fantastic, whereas the overall story was middle of the road. While we do get to see some X-Men stuff, boobs, and butts, there's a lot that's left to be desired here in...
Sinister has knocked out the X-Men by broadcasting...
We may want to pay attention. This could explain a critical plot point.
There are 8 levels in Deadpool, and each one is almost the same exact level over and over again, and High Moon knows it. The majority of the game is mostly just in hallways with different textures. They try to mix things up a bit with things like the 8-bit theme, the rail shooting, and even the death sections, but for the most part, everything is a hallway where a group of guys show up and then they try and fight you. Sometimes there might be a jumping puzzle, and then there's also an area on Genosha that uses Sentinel arms to solve puzzles. These sections are desperately needed to break up the flow of the hallways. The hallways will eventually come to an open area where there is a boss fight of some variety, sometimes. Since there are only 4 bosses, most of the arenas are just waves of enemies that come after you, forcing you to fight them with some fairly clunky combat. Combat is relatively simple. You have 3 melee weapons to choose from, each having their own pros and cons. You start off with Deadpool's trusty swords, which are a mixture of speed and damage, size, which are specifically for trying to achieve high combos with their speedy attacks, and giant hammers that are used to just defeat enemies instead of getting combos. Melee uses a traditional mix of light and heavy combos that are used to build up a meter called momentum that can be unleashed with a special attack of your choice. While I don't think that melee combat is especially bad, there are aspects surrounding combat that make the entire experience less than enjoyable. Some of those things are general melee combat clunkiness. Fighting can be fun, but it's not particularly smooth. The animations for combat have a certain delay to them that is a little off-putting to me. They definitely seem to be trying to ape the Arkham combat system, but it's like they ordered the code from Temu. Because of this, it made me only want to use the size for the entire game, simply for the amount of speed they possessed. Upgrades can make weapons better and do more damage, but it doesn't fix the clunky flow of combat. The camera is a huge pain point in this game. It's funny that I complained about Elden Ring's camera in my review for that game, and the same issues also appeared in Deadpool almost a decade earlier. The camera operation is adequate enough, but has the issue of getting stuck against walls, and when you're playing a game that has tons of hallways, that becomes an issue. Essentially, when you get close enough to a wall, the camera will push into Deadpool, making it hard to control and see anything. Just like the camera, Deadpool can also get stuck on a variety of things. There were quite a few times where the character would just float off the ground because he was standing on a small rock or something. Times where he would get stuck on objects while trying to get away from enemies. Sometimes he would float on weird terrain. Movement in this game while trying to juggle waves of enemies was a chore. But those things I can deal with for the most part. There are two things that I can't get over in this game: stealth and guns. Stealth is a weird mechanic here. There are only a few areas where it actually happens, and when it's brought up early into the game, it's made to seem like it would be a mechanic that you would use a lot and would give the player more choice for how to handle encounters. However, stealth is only usable in specific sections, and it's really just played for laughs more than anything. The animations are dependent on which weapon you have out at the time, and there are two options for stealth: using a gun, which, well, that obviously doesn't go too well, or using a melee weapon. The problem is that in most cases, the animations for the stealth kills are so long that an enemy will see you doing them. So when I actually did use stealth, I found the shortest animation, which was on the sword, and used that. What sucks is that I didn't want to use stealth because of how awful it was, but there was at least one level where I was forced to use it. If you got caught, you had to start over from a checkpoint, which is different from the rest of the game where the enemies will just start attacking you. Luckily, you retained any Deadpool points that you gained from killing the enemies, so it was a great place to grind out upgrades. However awful stealth was, the worst mechanic in this game by far was the gunplay. Guns are simple. You point and you shoot, and that's what they do. But High Moon has tried to add some zest to it that just doesn't work in my opinion. Guns work on an auto-aim system. When you aim a gun using the left trigger, the reticle will lock onto an enemy, even following them around, and all you have to do is shoot. However, if you move your right stick at all, it'll stop the lock-on. It's an awkward system in a world where I have been conditioned to aim with the right stick non-stop. Heck, it's incongruent with Deadpool's own game. I look around with the right stick the whole game. It's your camera. Then I have to stop using it when I try to shoot, or else it breaks the lock-on. Now, this auto-lock effect only happens if you zoom in to aim. You can do what is essentially a hip fire that doesn't lock on, but why would I do that when I have a lock-on mechanic? The worst part is that the game actively rewards you for hitting headshots by giving you more damage, which actively breaks the lock-on of the camera because the lock-on only locks onto the body. So this means you have to lock on, then break the lock-on to try and hit the headshot. It's super clunky, and I don't like it. The only good thing about guns is the gun kata system, which is a special move that you can use once you build up enough of the momentum meter. The reason this is nice is because Deadpool can gain health back from hitting combos on enemies, and if you are using gun kata, then you're going to rack up combo points, and it's a great way to get a lot of health back when you're in those huge sections where waves of enemies are coming after you. Deadpool does have his mutant healing ability, but it takes what feels like 10 or so seconds before it'll kick in, and it's interrupted by damage. So you can hide to get health back, but it takes time, and with enemies rushing you, it's far easier to try and get a combo in to get some health back. The enemies are lackluster. They try to bring in some variety later on, but the majority of the enemies are faceless bad guys who either try to hit you with a melee weapon or shoot you with a gun. There are some sinister clone bad guys later on that are more difficult, and some huge mutated looking guys that have a lot more health, but once you hit a certain point, you've seen all there is to see. I did not play on the hardest difficulty, but Deadpool definitely seems to work on the idea that difficulty comes from spongier enemies that attack in huge groups. There's also a stun mechanic that lasts for quite a long time as well. Like I said, combat seems to be trying to copy the Arkham combat in its own way, with light and heavy attacks, but also when enemies attack you, you can counter by hitting the B button. The problem is that because combat is so janky and you fight in a lot of hallways, the flow doesn't always work the way it could. So this leads to the finale of the game. You fight through Genosha, you fight 3 lackluster bosses, and through a bunch of hallways to make it to one final arena to face Sinister. The game instead gives you a boss gauntlet of all the bosses you already fought before, except at the same time. Instead of fighting Arclight, Blockbuster, and Vertigo on their own, you have to fight all 3 of them again at once, as well as a group of lackeys.
Deadpool! Time to die!
Vertigo! Arclight! Blockbuster! Hey, did we kill those guys? Oh! Whatever! These clones are gonna get pwned! At least the new Blockbuster smells better though.
But it's even worse, because Vertigo is there making the screen vibrate the whole time. Not only am I fighting reused bosses again, I can barely see while I'm doing it. Pro tip, run up the stairs and shoot her first, she takes 2 shots to kill. Then Sinister makes his appearance. He splits into multiple versions of himself, and I think I counted that you have to kill him 12 times before you finally defeat him. It's not a good boss fight, and he has a throw attack that had me stun locked a few times. The worst part is that the boss fight isn't even given any special arena or fanfare. It's in the same exact place where you fought Arclight, Blockbuster, and Vertigo 10 seconds earlier. And finally, we cap things off with...
Hell of a thing, killing a man. Take away all he's got and all he's ever gonna have.
We're totally breaching this door and killing everyone inside, aren't we?
Yep, time for some shameless cross-promotion. Player, cue that slow-mo.
There aren't really all that many things to put in this category, so I'll keep it short and sweet. The game is capped at 60 FPS, even on PC. I wish that weren't the case, but it is something that I adjusted to. Finally, I want to put overall combat in this section as a whole. I complained at length about the issues surrounding combat, but overall it felt solidly okay. It's not great, it's not super awful, except for the guns. It has elements of both good and bad, but that's about it, and I won't harp on it anymore. I had a certain image of the Deadpool game in my head from the bit that I played back in the day, and I think it's important to go back and look at games we played growing up to see if they really hold up. In the case of Asura's Wrath, I think it did for the most part. The image of Deadpool I had certainly changed as I finished the game, and I think that while there is something here that really does work in the writing, there's a lot in the design that's left to be desired. Deadpool is hilarious and is an era of gaming that I hope we can get back to once all the games made for modern audiences have died out. We've certainly seen our share of boobs and butts making their return in the Asian market with games like The First Descendant, Stellar Blade, and the myriad of gacha games, so maybe we're stepping in the direction of another possible Deadpool-style game. All we need now is to find writers who can make people laugh and write insane storylines for our demented merc with a mouth. I don't have anything else to say about Deadpool other than the only reason I even wanted to play it was because of the Deadpool and Wolverine movie. That movie really ignited the curiosity to play the game because, like I said, I'd only ever played the first bit of it back in the day. If you're like me and you have this game, check it out simply for the character and his weird charm. With that being said, I want to thank you all for watching the video. If you all have any suggestions for games you want me to look at, let me know in the comments. Like and sub, all that stuff, and I'll see you all in the next video, whatever that may be.